turning to the sex.
Of course.
I mean, first of all, the striking thing, there are things that even in 2025, I could not actually read out in this book,
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
Which is all the more reason to buy it. But there's a sort of morality we would understand, which is people get married, don't they? They have husbands and wives, and they get betrayed if someone else sleeps with their husband or their wife. So there's a kind of identifiable sort of morality there, and people get into trouble for sleeping with the emperor's wife, don't they, and so on. But so let's just start with that. There's a sort of spine of morality, sexual morality might understand.
Absolutely, there is absolutely a sexual morality, and essentially it's focused on the idea of the rights that a free male citizen has, and the right that free male citizen has over his familia, so his family, which would include his wife, his children, and so on, but would also include his dependents and his slaves. And it is a crime for other citizens, say, to perpetrate sexual crimes against the dependents of a free male citizen. So for one citizen to rape another citizen's wife, for instance, that of course would be viewed absolutely as a crime. Right. But the free male citizen has the right to use his dependents pretty much as he likes. And if we're looking at the kind of the slaves in a household, that free citizen can use male or female, adult or child, any way he wants, and it is kind of expected to. Not in a kind of obsessive way. To be overly interested in sex is seen as being Greek and therefore perverted and weird. You do it rather in the way that you have a pee. So there's a Latin word that can mean either urinate or ejaculate. I can't believe I'm saying this to the former Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Should have seen the MI5 reports.
But the dynamic, therefore, is this is the great dynamic. Are you the person who is acting on a dependent, or are you the dependent who is being acted upon? And if you are a free citizen and you allow yourself to be acted upon, and even worse, seem to enjoy it, then you are the lowest of the low. The idea that it's all an absolute free-for-all in ancient Rome, you can do whatever you like, is simply not true. And so one of the things that runs throughout the lives is a sense that if you, as a free male citizen, allow yourself to submit to sexual penetration, then you are utterly contemptible. And you can see this in both the first and the last of the lives. So in the life of Julius Caesar, early on, Julius Caesar, as a young man, on the make, he's an officer in Bithynia, which is now northwest Turkey. And he goes to see the king there, and the king supposedly has his evil way with Caesar, and Caesar submits to his advances. And although Caesar is one of history's great womanizers, he never stops sleeping around, this is the one thing that his enemies will never let him forget. They just go on and on and on about it. And it's as though this stain of dirt can never be cleansed from his toga. And then at the end, there's an account of a conspiracy against Domitian. And Domitian is hunting down everybody involved in it. And he decides that he has all the suspected conspirators arrested, and he sentences them all to death, except for a pair who say, we couldn't possibly have done this because we enjoy submitting ourselves to sexual penetration. And Domitian goes, oh, well, you couldn't have been involved in the conspiracy then. Fine, go away. And that's an example, I think, of the strangeness. You could once you understand the moral code, then you see what's going on. But it's to us, it's a strange way. It's kind of alien, and it needs to be explained and translated, I think.
Although in many ways it's much more permissive than certainly societies have been until very recently, because there's a sort of fluidity between heterosexual and homosexual behavior, where, I mean, in this country, homosexuality was illegal and you went to prison for it 60 years ago, and yet these Caesars are pretty omnivorous in their sexual appetites, according to Suetonius.
That is because they have no notion of heterosexuality or homosexuality. These are very recent concepts that are grounded in the cultural presumptions that we have. Of course, Suetonius is very interested in sex, is well aware that there are men who are only interested in women and men who are only interested in men. Probably he might have talked about this in relation to women in his biography of the great prostitutes, but we don't know. But so he will say of Claudius only ever slept with women. I mean, how interesting. Or of Galba, who is the first emperor after Nero's death, so in the year of the 4 emperors, that Nero only ever had sex with kind of big muscle-bound men. And again, he says this is quite interesting. But it's like saying, a man only ever sleeps with blondes, or a man only ever sleeps with brunettes. It's a foible, but it's not absolutely defining their sexuality. Whereas if you, as a man, submit yourself to sexual advances, then that is deeply repellent. And in fact, if you're a woman and you, God, again, I can't believe I'm... But if as a man, you're having sex with a woman, and the woman does anything to enhance the pleasure of the man, basically the Roman feeling is that that's kinky, dirty, revolting, and disgusting, which I think isn't generally how people see ancient Rome.
I feel I'm taking you outside your comfort zone.
Not at all. But I'm aware I'm in the Royal Geographical Society. And
yeah. And Mrs. Holland is in the audience,
she
so
is.
He has to be careful about what he's...
She's heard this filth for many times.
Why does Suetonius put all the sex in? Is it straightforward titillation, pornography?
No, I think it's because, in his opinion, it reveals the character of the Caesars. Sex is something that the Romans are far more matter-of-fact about it. And in fact, the view of Tiberius as this monstrous pervert is precisely because he does retreat to the Isle of Capri, and he kind of immures himself seemingly in a kind of absolute privacy. The Romans feel that the only possible reason that anyone could have for wanting privacy, for wanting a private life, is because you're getting up to absolute revolting stuff. He's doing it because sexuality, like your attitude to food, like your attitude to fitness, like your relish for military campaigns or whatever, your enthusiasm for public displays, it enables him as a biographer to take the moral temperature of all the various emperors.
Yeah, but he does say, you're not going to believe this. But...
Oh, sure. I mean, he's having his cake and eating it. I mean, he repeatedly says, the things he got up to were too disgusting to describe. Anyway, so this is the first disgusting thing he did. I mean, he does that quite a lot. But I think it's...
But it's not serving the purpose of pornography. It's not serving as... It's not erotic literature, or... Is it? I mean, or maybe it is.
People have found it erotic. I mean, the Marquis de Sade certainly, and people have. But I think it's the most memorable passages are so famously shocking that I think most people would not find them stimulating. Maybe that's naive of me. But I don't think so. I think when you read the repellent, particularly repellent sections, you will know, these are pretty repellent.
So let's, we've got just over 20 minutes left. Talking about its impact, the impact of Suetonius and this book on, we've talked about how people perceive Rome. You make the claim again in the book, and we've had a question from someone who's anonymous, that to what extent does TV shows like Succession, The Sopranos, I think you mentioned in the book, in the introduction to the book, Dynasty, the 1980s sitcom, not sitcom, whatever it was, soap opera. I mean, is this the absolute model now of, this is the first of these are these families, let's all look at how the powerful fight each other and do in each other, and son fights son and father fights daughter and whatever. I
mean, the idea of kind of dynastic feuding is obviously a staple of literature and then becomes a staple of television. But I do think that I, Claudius has an outsized influence on the way that drama has developed. So the BBC show in the 70s obviously derives from Graves's novel, which in turn is hugely dependent on Suetonius. And what it fixes on really is the central core of the lives of the Caesars, which is Augustus and his family. So that's Augustus, Tiberius, Caligula, Tiberius, Claudius, and Nero. And the influence of that on American drama in particular has been enormous. So it was a masterpiece theatre in the United States, and it was kind of prestige show. And I think they liked it because it was BBC. It was posh, RADA actors.
Yeah, but they
doing disgusting things. So it was.
But they like the Romans, don't they? I mean,
they like the Romans.
I mean,
too.
Go to Washington. The Senate. Clue in the
But I think
name.
I think what it did was to kind of provide an imprimatur of quality.
Right.
That then got picked up. So you mentioned Dynasty. I mean, Dynasty is not particularly, I guess, high quality. But it was that was the first deliberate attempt to try
I hope Joan Collins isn't in the
yeah.
audience.
But Joan Collins is a very I, Claudius figure in that soap opera. But it's The Sopranos that really very, very self-consciously draws on I, Claudius and on the Roman model. And there are mentions of Caesar and Augustus and kind of echoes of events in Suetonius throughout The Sopranos. And because The Sopranos was so influential, it then had a knock-on effect on Game of Thrones or Succession or whatever.
And you went to talk to the Succession writers.
I did. So I got asked in before they had actually sat down and begun writing the scripts. And Jesse Armstrong, the genius who was behind the show, just wanted me to come in and talk about the Julio-Claudians because he saw that as the model of the powerful family, of the kind of the absolute fons et origo.
Should have got me in to talk about the Murdochs. I had to deal with them.
Well, so it's interesting. I mean, they must have had people come in and talk about the Murdochs, I guess. But
mainly some of the Murdochs, if you actually watch
it. Very possibly. But that wasn't enough. They wanted that stamp of ancient Roman quality. It's kind of posh and sinister and sexy and glamorous all at once, which is obviously very much what they wanted for Succession. I think it was really telling that he did want that. He wanted that kind of that patina of the Suetonian